Hey everybody, I have a little rant going on with United Airlines. One of my children was flying or planned to fly to Nova Scotia, Halifax this week. Wednesday had a 6:30 flight out of Moline to O'Hare to Halifax. Got to the airport, everything was going great. Flew from Moline to O'Hare, 3 hour layover, and then we started getting the text messages. Flight delayed, and then finally later in the afternoon, got the message that the flight was canceled, and and of course super packed at O'Hare. I think with various things going on with the fires, there potentially was um, a lot of different delays going on. In fact, later that night when I called United's help desk, I was on the phone every time they gave an update on the how long it was going to take. Um, the time kept going, went from 40 minutes to 45 minutes and an hour finally. But back to my story. So, uh, uh, flew to O'Hare. Flights got canceled from everybody they talked to. It was the flight the next day was totally full, so the next available flight was Friday. No option, no mention of a travel voucher or a hotel voucher, even if it was delayed till Thursday. No, nothing. And so they went to the baggage claim, got there. At that point, my wife and I just started driving, 3 hour drive to O'Hare, and it worked. So jumped in the car, took a 45 minutes or so for the baggage to come out, and waited around and picked them up and came back home. And on the way home, the got a message update saying, "Hey, your flight's been rescheduled till Thursday." So, being the good father I am, got home Wednesday night, and I went to the computer, tried to get onto United's website and could never log in there. Ended up getting on there with the United app. I logged onto their account instead of mine, and called the help desk. And at that point, and everybody at United that I've talked to, in fairness, was very polite. But talked to the agent, described what was going on, and basically what our desire was is to say we want to redo everything on Friday, which is this morning, and say we had to come back to Moline, so we wanted to be able to fly out of Moline at 6:30 in the morning, and basically just repeat the trip. So it took quite a while. So the funny thing is I was on hold probably for 40 minutes, and the time never went down. It was only going up, and there was always an option that said press 9 if you want to do the automated response. And I thought, boy, it's what are the odds that it's a relatively complex situation, not just give me the next flight to Seattle. It's we want to do something. But I said, all right, I'll press it and see what happens. And the funny thing was I hit 9 and got a live agent instantly. So again, worked with that agent, real nice lady. I have no complaints around the customers. The people that we've talked to, everybody's been very polite. And so she again worked with me, got the flights rescheduled. Moline to O'Hare was no problem, but O'Hare to Halifax evidently was pretty full. So they said that the only seats available. There's a $50 upcharge, and I basically said no way. I've already had to drive 6 hours to go pick them up in O'Hare. There is absolutely no way that I'm going to pay an extra fee because this is not my fault. United canceled, and something story about the pilot didn't show up, and then they found a new pilot, and then but the new pilot was going to time out, so they couldn't actually fly to Halifax, and so they just canceled flight. And I get it. I mean, I certainly don't want people flying who are exhausted or beyond their allowable limits, but it was just very frustrating that like what caused the situation. And I think the smoke situation from the Canadian wildfires doesn't help. Anyway, back to what's going on. So talk to them, and the person was like, yeah, I totally understand, and if I were in your shoes, I agree, let me see what I can do. yada, yada, yada. Talking, it's kind of funny. You tell that United has pretty old systems because she was like, all right, why WD? So you could tell that she's using letters to navigate through their systems, which is just it must be an old mainframe type thing. Um, and worked that out, made a note, and then I said, oh, by the way, we had a $50 luggage fee. We're not going to pay that again either. I'm not going to get in there and have a luggage fee on top, paying it twice. And so she agreed, and made a note in there, said if you have any problems, just make sure you show your receipt when you check in on Friday. Um, at that time, thought everything was good to go. Verified that I could see the new flight in the United app, so I thought we are set. Um, did not. So the mistake, in hindsight, should have checked in on the flight last night on the app, and then maybe this could have been resolved a little bit. So got to the airport this morning, and granted, getting the flight leaves at 6:30. We're getting there by 5:30, getting up at 4:30 in the morning. It's not I'm not a real early morning person, so that's not my thing. And so got to the airport. We're thinking we're golden. Walked up to the counter, and the funny thing is the person uh, recognized my child and said, "Oh, hey," with a name. I'm not saying names on this on purpose. And typed, and they're like, what's your last name again? And we gave the last name, and they said, I don't see anything here for you. And I pulled up the app, and I'm like, right here's the flight information. It leaves at 6:30 on July 24th. There's a little button right there that said check in. I kind of wish I would have clicked it. And it turned out he was basically brand new, so there was someone else there, and again, very helpful people there. That had someone else come over, and then she's like, there's nothing in here. I'm gonna have to call the help system, and she did that. Meanwhile, it's feel like a Stephen Colbert thing. Um, I went to another section on the app, and then came back, and the flight disappeared. So like it never existed. In fact, the next flight in the app was the return trip from Halifax to Moline next week. And so I thought, oh boy. And of course, no real proof other than my child did have a screenshot from last night that they sent to us parents to say, here's the flight information. So we again had that. Anyway, so worked it all out. Instead of flying Moline to O'Hare to Halifax, it was going to be Moline to O'Hare to Toronto to Halifax. Would arrived about a half an hour later. Golden. Thought we're set, and they just said, well, it's within 45 minutes of the plane leaving now, so I don't want to risk you not getting your luggage if it misses the loading. So just take it with you and gate check it. And I fly a fair amount. I've never heard of doing this. Certainly gate checking carry-ons, but I mean this was a full big suitcase. But so took it through security. No issues there. Got to the gate, went to go board the flight, and for whatever reason, they couldn't print. And evidently, the person in front, the person in front had to check bags, and they printed everything off just fine. The little thing you put on the bag. But when my child got up there, for some reason, hey, can't print this. Can't print this. Oh, by the way, the flight's got to go. So I guess you are going to miss this flight. And so I had just got home. We live about a half an hour from the airport. Just got home when we got the call that says missed my flight. And unfortunately, the next flight available would have gotten in so late tonight. And there was an event that they were traveling to attend. Would have gotten so late, would have missed it. And so the whole trip is canceled. And again, the agents were great, and they said, "Hey, you should have gotten a hotel voucher because your flight was canceled. So most people, you're not expected to, if you're especially in a connecting flight, you're not expected to drive back home when you flew to the airport. But we never got offered a hotel voucher. And she's like, this whole thing, doesn't make any sense. So she said that she would go in and start a complaint for us." Gave us a card It said, hey, take this card. You have to. I can't do the refund for you, but go to this and take care of that. So went and picked them up. Came home and I'm like, all right, I'll take care of this. It's been a rough travel. Meanwhile, everybody's upset. Very disappointed not to go to attend this. The people that they're going to go see are upset, and obviously nothing that we could have done any different. Um, outside of me just driving them to O'Hare this morning. Um, so I log on here and I start. Someone's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "All right, I've got everything prepared. Let me send out the whole story." And then they say, "All right, well, where are you now?" Because I'm pretending I'm my child, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm home." "Oh, well, this is a number you call when you're like stuck at an airport to get help. You have to get a refund. You have to go to the united.com/refunds, or there's also united.com/customer care if you want to file a complaint." And I was like, "So why'd they give me this card if this isn't what I'm supposed to do?" So I was like, "All right, fair enough. I will follow the process." So went to united.com/refund. And oh, by the way, according to that, they're still traveling, even though they missed flight. They missed their first connection and probably the second connection by now. So they said you really can't ask for a refund until you've actually you have to wait for the flights to get over with. So I filled out everything for the flight on Wednesday, and the so filled it all out, and then and they're like, probably I'm not getting any reimbursement for the mileage because it has to be like a taxi. You have to have a receipt, or a hotel. Of course, there was no hotel involved. By the way, we'll let you know your response within a week. And oh, by the way, we bought tickets that were refundable. So it's just like, this is, again, agents were great, but the whole customer experience with United, I don't know what happened when they say they put all the information in and we got the new travel arrangements for this morning, and then it all just disappeared out of the system. Um, don't know why. We're at the gate, people are boarding, and they say, "Well, sorry, I can't print a luggage." Well, why don't you just, sometimes they do the red tags where they basically take it from you. You get on the plane and you get off the plane and you get it back. Could have maybe, I mean, it's a bigger luggage, but there could have been something. Instead, it's just like, "Sorry, the plane's got to go, so I guess you missed your flight." We were there well over an hour ahead of time, so we followed all the rules. Small airport, so you get right through security. And I appreciate the agent. I don't know why they maybe couldn't printed bags, but I don't know. Has anybody else any advice? Has anybody else dealt with United and trying to get refunds? I fill out the form. I wrote up an explanation of what's going on. No real option for me to call and talk to someone. There's not a phone number. It's a form I have to fill out. It just, man, oh man, twice, 2 days in a row trying to get to Halifax, and both times weren't able to make the trip. And we and I know it doesn't matter, but we booked these tickets months and months ago. And you show up at the airport and you think everything's golden. I totally get that things happen, whether it's weather related. So I'm really not complaining about that. It's just if today would have gone well, I would have said we're golden. But when you get there today thinking we're going to be solid, and they don't even have a record of the ticket, even though it shows up in our app. They rebook everything, and then you can't board the plane because you can't print a luggage tag. It's just crazy. So again, I'm really curious. Hey, anybody have any ideas of how we can get our money back? And if anybody's experienced this before, leave a comment on this. I feel like it's just I'm afraid it's money gone. And my kid paid for their own tickets and everything. And so it's really irritating, let alone the disappointment for missing a family gathering. It's something been planned for a long time, and a big trip. Not a minor anymore, but going to a new country for the first time, second time ever being on a plane, and twice get stuck in Chicago, and this time get stuck at the gate. It's just insane. All right, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think.